Good evening and welcome. I'm Maryam Alavi, Dean of Georgia Tech's Scheller College of Business. And thank you for joining us this evening for Dean's CEO speaker session. For tonight's conversation, I am excited to welcome Mr. Ted Decker, CEO of the Home Depot. Ted has graciously accepted our invitation to discuss his leadership philosophy and to tell us a little bit about his vision for Home Depot's future and the future of retail and shopping in general. Ted Decker is Chairman, President, and CEO of the Home Depot, and he's also a member of the company's board of directors. Just give you a little bit of a background about the company and specifically about Ted's background. The Home Depot is the world's largest home improvement retailer with more than 2,300 stores and 500,000 associates. Kind of small, Under Ted's leadership, the company is creating a seamless, interconnected shopping experience for professional and do-it-yourself customers while championing a unique culture. Ted joined the Home Depot in 2000 as Director of Business Valuation. Over the past 22 years, he has held several strategic positions across the company, including Senior Director of Business Valuation, Vice President, Senior Vice President of Strategic Business, and Senior Vice President of Retail Finance. His experience across the business enables him to blend the art and science of retail. Let's give a warm Georgia Tech welcome to Ted Decker.
That was a very nice introduction.
Well, I could have spent a whole hour introducing you and your background, but I figured out these people are here to listen to you and not to me talking about you. So,
before we begin, Dean, let me congratulate you on 8 amazing years as Dean. 9 amazing years at Scheller and Georgia Tech, the city of Atlanta, in Scheller. I know you're still going to be, a full faculty member, but what you did as Dean is just unbelievable.
I will be in this position till the end of June, so I will be focused on my dean activities and then joining the faculty, going back to research and teaching, which is why I came to academia to begin with, right? So, Ted, thank you for joining us tonight. I know the demand on your schedule. I know all the activities you get engaged in and the responsibilities for running a company like the Home Depot. We are very grateful for your time and the time that you're going to be spending and sharing with us tonight.
Well, I can also say I'm just a huge fan of Georgia Tech. We have so many Georgia Tech folks or associates at the Home Depot and just an unbelievable relationship. Many of the Georgia Tech folks are here today. For those of you who want to talk to a Home Depot associate who went to Georgia Tech and now having a terrific career at Home Depot, please grab our team after this meeting. But we just couldn't be happier with the relationship with Georgia Tech and the talent we get from Tech is just extraordinary. Truly world-class university, and have it in our backyard it's a differentiator for Home Depot. It's something that's really helped us as we've built our business over 43 years.
I will ask you a number of questions, Ted, and then we'll open it to the audience and to the members of the audience. When we get to the Q&A section, please raise your hand and we'll bring a mic for you to ask your question. So, The first set of questions are sort of rapid fire, get to know Ted a little bit better type of questions. So, what was your first job, Ted?
First job, I joined a banks management training program, Pittsburgh National Bank, PNC, as you know it down here in Pittsburgh. So that was my start. Terrific start, formal training program, and spent 7 years with PNC and just had a terrific early career.
And that's when, after that, or through that, you went for your MBA.
Yes,
at
I
Carnegie
went.
Mellon.
I went for 3 years down to Sydney, Australia. They had a merchant banking operation in Australia, and I did about 2 years in Pittsburgh, 3 years in Sydney. Came back for a couple of years in Pittsburgh, and then went back to Carnegie Mellon Business School, which is in Pittsburgh.
We still love you, that's okay. How do you spend your time typically on a Saturday?
Oh, it's I don't golf, so it's not it's not like I'm golfing every Saturday. So it's pretty diverse. Generally, there's work. I'll do some work. It's usually a 7-day thing. I'll get a workout in, and then either hiking with family, or we have a place up on Lake Lanier out boating on a Saturday. So depending on the weather, but something with the family.
That's great. Sounds
Yeah.
like fun. I've heard you love live music.
Yes.
So, what are some of your favorite shows you have seen lately?
Yep. So huge live music fan. That has been, so I said I don't golf. That is probably, outside of family and exercise, that's probably my number one thing I do to kind of go do something completely different. I like all kinds of music. Huge Allman Brothers fan, and any genre off, Southern rock jam band I love. And best show I've seen recently, the Allman Brothers used to always do a run at the Beacon Theater in New York. They'd go in March for 12, 14 nights in a row. I never made that, unfortunately, but a kind of spin-off band, my favorite band right now is the Tedeschi Trucks Band. If any of you know Tedeschi Trucks, in this fall I went up to New York and saw Tedeschi Trucks at the Beacon. So it wasn't the Allman Brothers, but there was some blood relatives in Tedeschi Trucks Band. So as close as I got.
Well, good for you.
Yeah.
I knew you were an English major in your undergraduate years at Williams and Mary. Have you read any good books lately?
Yes, I don't actually read a lot of business books. I never have. I always read sort of classic novels. I always have a book. And over the holiday break, I read Amar Tolles, who wrote A Gentleman in Moscow. He's a current terrific American author, and he has a new book out, The Lincoln Highway, just came out. I haven't read that. But I read his first book, which was Rules of Civility, which was a period piece in the 30s in New York City, and it was sort of like a Fitzgerald-ish type book. So high recommend.
Great.
Amar Tolles.
Excellent. You have been at Home Depot for about 22 years. What motivated you? How did you end up at Home Depot to begin with?
Random beyond random. So if you don't have a plan, it's not that it doesn't matter, but things can still work out. So I was with Kimberly Clark in London. I joined Kimberly Clark after business school, and I was on my way home, so my 3-year assignment was up, and I was flying to Atlanta. Kimberly Clark has their healthcare and B2B business in Roswell. It's been here for 30 plus years. And I had meetings in Atlanta with Kimberly Clark, and the office was in between my house and the airport. And I stopped in the office to pick up some paperwork for the flight, and the phone rang, and it was a headhunter for a job with Home Depot. And I said, I'm getting on a flight in 3 hours to Atlanta. What the heck? I'll come over for an interview. And that's how random life can be.
Wow, that's really interesting. So we know the founders of the Home Depot. Bernie Marcus and Arthur Blank. Did they give you any advice when you were stepping into the role?
Yes. What two terrific Atlantans, and what they did to build the company, what they've done to give back to the city, to the country, to even global initiatives is unparalleled. And they're also very generous with their time, with all associates. I mean, they're not actively involved in the management of the company, but they're in stores, they're around, they're available, and they were both very generous with their time, both with a heavy focus on culture and how important, like that's job one, is to maintain the culture. And we'll talk about culture, I'm sure, as we go through
I'll
this
ask you
chat.
about that, yeah.
But it's they both, again, spent a lot of time with me. Bernie in particular spent also a lot of time on merchandising, because Bernie is he is a genius. I mean, he is right up there with the merchants of merchants. Once, not quite once a quarter, I would meet him somewhere and spend a day with him. And we'd walk stores, we'd walk competitors, we'd walk Costco's, we'd walk Walmart, we'd walk obviously through Home Depot's. And he really just pounded fundamentals of the business model, how we do things, why he set it up the way he set it up. And as I said, very, very generous with his time. And that was just an incredible blessing over several years to be able to spend that kind of time with a founder, legendary founder.
So I want to get into the issue around culture, because I have heard a lot about the amazing culture of the Home Depot. How would you characterize it? What are the key attributes? What are some of the sort of ways that the Home Depot does its thing?
Yeah.
Like if I walk into, which I have walked into the Home Depot, great place, what would I take away in terms of the culture of the place?
Well, hopefully when you walk a Home Depot, I like to refer to it as there's a buzz. And I'm certainly biased and attuned to it, but I think when you walk into a Home Depot, I don't know if anyone agrees, I mean, there's an energy level. There are plenty of great retailers, and I'm not going to name anyone else by name, but you generally don't get a buzz.
Right.
You're on a task, an errand, and you stop into a store and get what you need and walk out. But in Home Depot, there's this energy level, and the energy level comes from the associates. And excuse me, and the engaged associates are really engaged because of this culture. And there are two principal archetypes, if you will, of the culture. And one is what we call the inverted pyramid. And I heard about the inverted pyramid, within 10 minutes of my first interview with Carol Tomei, who hired me at Home Depot, who's now CEO of UPS, another phenomenal Atlantan who I owe so much to. I worked for Carol for 12 years or something like that as a direct report, and she hired me. But it was almost instant. You started to talk about the inverted pyramid. In the inverted pyramid, you think of any organization, army, military, universities, corporations, you have a pyramid. And as the workforce, and as you move up the management ranks, fewer and fewer people, and the CEO sits on top of any pyramid, any org chart. You start an org chart, board of directors, CEO, and you go down the org chart. Well, at Home Depot, the founders flipped that, and they said the customer is at the top, and right below the customer, so your customer's the base, but they're the top, and then the associates, the frontline store associates, because that's where the magic happens. They're the ones interacting, engaging every day with the customers, and then we don't call it a headquarters, we call it the store support center. And that's the office in Atlanta. We exist to support the stores and our distribution centers. And then at the very bottom is the senior management team. And the archetype really speaks to servant leadership. And you can't, we all have egos, But if you're going to work at Home Depot and you're going to succeed and you're going to enjoy it and you're going to connect, you're going to be a person who sees that as a fabulous approach and way to go about, establishing a company. And the two founders were famously very, very successful with a regional home improvement chain in California, and they were fired for nothing they did wrong. It was a management issue with the holding company. And they literally set about, how could we form a more perfect company, if you will? And they literally, sketched out on blank pieces of paper, not just the business model, and the business model is phenomenal, so service, selection, price, all in one roof. Before you had to go to the paint store, the hardware store, the flooring store, the garden center. You put it all under one roof with everyday low prices, with unbelievable service. So that was the business model. But more importantly, they set out to say, what would be a more perfect company? And they're let's flip the pyramid. We're on the bottom. We support the associates. Bernie Marcus famously said, if you take care of the associates, they'll take care of the customers, and everything else takes care of itself. The other important aspect of the company is what we call our values wheel. And there are 8 principal values, and they're doing the right thing, giving back, taking care of each other, entrepreneurial spirit, shareholder value, et cetera. But taking care of each other and giving back were maybe 2 more heavily weighted of the 8. And those 2 principles of the inverted pyramid and the values wheel is really how we run the company. And every decision we make goes through the filter. Are we doing the right thing by the customer? Are we doing the right thing by the frontline associates? And are we living our values, which you can boil down to in any construct? Are you doing the right thing? I mean, I fundamentally believe in virtually any situation, every human being knows what the right thing is. I mean, truly. I mean, virtually in there's some very, very complicated, social things where you might have different points of view, but in a fundamental personal decision, I think we all know what the right thing is. And they set about to run a company doing the right thing. And that's the culture.
That's fabulous. And so Home Depot is a Fortune 17, excuse me, company that has reported record growth like year after year, quarter after quarter. How much do you think you can grow? How much more? And what are your plans around the growth?
A ton. So we are.
Remember that, a ton. Yeah.
A ton. We're a growth company, because that's the other thing they really instilled is, one of the 8 values is entrepreneurial spirit, and another one's creating shareholder value. So while they do the right thing, there was no mistake. We're a for-profit growth company, and delivering and building what is truly one of the most successful business models on any count. Years to 10 billion, years to 20 billion, years to 50 billion, et cetera. Market capitalization growth, unbelievably successful. But it's really because growth is in our DNA, and not being satisfied is in our DNA. And we are fortunate enough to have a phenomenal business model in an enormous space. So our total addressable market is over $900 billion. So it's an enormous market. And even at $157 odd billion, we're kind of 15 share of this enormous market. So there's plenty of growth. And when we get together as a team, one of the things that's fun is we talk about growth. I mean, if we talk about 10 things, 9 of them are growth. How, what's growing, what are new initiatives, what's working, what do we have to modify? But it is a growth mentality, and that's a very important dynamic to have that truly in the DNA of the company, where everyone totally is driven to grow and keep creating value. It offers career growth for our associates, wealth creation for associates and shareholders, opportunity for communities, because you put in a new store, you open up a new distribution center, have enhanced service levels with online orders, et cetera, et cetera. But our mentality is more, better, faster. So we are never satisfied. We will keep growing.
Well, that's interesting. That's probably how, as a very large, successful company, you keep the innovation going on an ongoing basis. So that's wonderful. Speaking of markets and market potentials, you talk a lot about your professional customer with analysts on your earning calls. So can you tell us more about this customer and how they may be different from the DIYers, do-it-yourselfers?
The consumers.
Yeah.
So we talk about pros and consumers, and consumer we use DIY, do it yourself, interchangeably. And that $900 billion market is equally split, about $450 billion each pro and DIY. And DIY is probably all of us in this room, weekend warriors, do-it-yourselfers, from small projects to larger projects. The pro is just that. This is someone who is makes their living as a repair remodeler, as a builder, not track large-scale builders, but a small builder, someone doing 1 or 2, 3 houses a year, a tradesperson, electrician, a plumber, a carpenter, and they're in our stores, virtually every week, multiple times a week. So you think of consumers in our store 5 or 6 times a year, 5, 6, 7 times a year, a pros in our store 60, 70, 80 times a year. Consumer might spend on average some hundreds of dollars, less than 1,000 on, think of 80 million households that shop the Home Depot. Where a pro's spending, thousands, and we segment pros from small pro to large pro, and they're just that. A small pro is going to spend, $3, $4, $5, $10,000, and a large pro can spend millions of dollars. So a lot of what we're doing for the pro to keep growing the business is continuing to build capabilities to service pros' purchase occasion outside of a cash and carry transaction at Home Depot. As I said, they're in our building. I mean, some pros are literally in our building every single day. Most would be in every week. But when they do a larger scale project, you think a basement remodel or adding square footage, an addition on a house, a total kitchen renovation, that's a very large project, very large spend. They're working with the homeowner, the customer. The homeowner always writes the check, right? So whether it's DIY or pro, it's a consumer-oriented spend. And the pro on the planned purchase, when they're planning out that larger purchase, they're buying larger quantities. It's a staged job, so you know what kind of sequence a job is being done. And much of it is delivered to job site, because you're going to frame something, or you're going to pour concrete, or you're going to drywall additional square footage. So this isn't something you're just going to stop at a Home Depot with a truck and grab and go. You need a scheduled delivery. So we're building out field sales force. We're building out distribution facilities, investing in massive amounts of incremental inventory to hold much, much deeper assortments in warehouses that would never fit in a typical store. All of this to capture more of that planned purchase of the pro, who is now tends to be making those purchases at wholesalers. So when we talked about growth, the growth will come from all that 85% share we don't have that's currently being serviced by others.
Excellent. Our shopping habits in general, the consumers' shopping habits have changed a lot, particularly over the last several years with the pandemic. What are your thoughts about what is next for retail, and what are you excited about?
Well, I mean, it's it's nothing new that you guys probably heard about the internet, you know, in e-commerce, right? So it's not that it's new. The pandemic accelerated it probably 5+ years. And again, it's nothing new. The trend to online shopping has been happening for years, but we were adding sort of 1 point a year of increased penetration from our online business. And with the pandemic, we, in 1 year, grew like 4 or 5 points of penetration. Another thing many of you don't know, show of hands, honest show of hands, of all commerce, how many of you know that the Home Depot is the 5th largest website e-commerce business in the country? You guys do.
You, you better know.
You, right? So I mean, that's like,
amazing. That's amazing.
you know, and that's like, you know,
Who would guess?
Amazon's obviously one, Apple, eBay, Walmart, Home Depot, number 5, over $20 billion e-commerce business. So, you know, obviously e-commerce is here to stay, and we've built a whole new website. This is why we love tech so much. A lot of this is data science and big data and search engines. We have loads of PhDs and data scientists and the like from Georgia Tech working in the e-com business. But Frank Blake, who was our CEO 2 CEOs ago, he framed it for us that it isn't e-commerce, it isn't multi-channel, it isn't omni-channel, it's interconnected retail.
Yeah.
And he came up with this term interconnected because we're a project business. And when we think about projects, certainly people come to Home Depot to pick something up. But generally, you're thinking about or in the middle of a project that's going to include, you know, ideation, discovery, research, know-how. How much can I do myself? What do I have to get someone else to do for me? What can I get home in my car? What can I get home by borrowing a neighbor's truck? What do I need to get delivered? What do I need to get installed? What do I need help with, et cetera, et cetera. So you're in this sort of interconnected journey, going online to find information, getting some things delivered, some things, you know, buy online, pick up in store. And it's this journey that you're constantly in our e-commerce platform or our app and then in the store. So it's interconnected, and for us, it's all about taking friction out of that process. How do you make that as frictionless as possible? Because as you all know, I mean, your tolerance for friction or things that don't work goes down by the day. And as the brand positioning that we're, you know, represent, you know, we can't frustrate you, we can't frustrate our customers. So we have to make that interconnected experience better and better and better. But it's exciting because the scale we're at, very, very few people can deliver, you know, the scale we deliver. I remember chatting with the president of Georgia Tech, and again, we were talking about R&D budgets, and you know, Tech has phenomenal, I think over $1 billion in kind of raw research. So our scale advantage and, you know, be able to track talent and resources and invest in what you need to do to create this interconnected, frictionless interconnected experience, you know, it is what is next for all of consumer engagement, whether it's restaurants or fast food or retail, or, you know, what Delta, you know, think of what Delta's done with their app and their, quote, interconnected experience. You know, they're best in class, and other great, you know, Atlanta neighbors. So that's the present, that's the future, and we can't run fast enough to stay ahead of, not the competition. We're staying ahead of the competition. We have to stay ahead of consumer expectation.
Exactly. So I've heard you talk about the next generation of homeowners. Who are these people? What are their expectations? And how are they different?
Well, you know, in some ways, they're not different at all. Going back, in Craig Manier, the prior CEO's first year, which was 2014, there was a lot of chat then that we were going to the rental economy, and everyone was going to rent. This was, not really recovered yet from the housing bust of 2010. And, remember Zipcar and Rent the Runway, and no one was going to buy purses or dresses or cars or houses or tools. It was a rental economy. And millennials are not going to buy anything. They're going to, they're not going to stay at hotels. It's all going to be Airbnb. And, this is huge, mega trend. Well, and we were obviously a little concerned about it, going, well, holy cow, if you have the largest generation that just from a demography is replacing the prior largest generation of homeowners, the baby boomer, and they don't want to own anything, and we're in home improvement, that's maybe not so good. So we did an interesting thing that summer. Rather than our traditional summer internship program, where you'd get business majors and IT majors and have them come do that type work in the summer at Home Depot, we went in and hired a broad swath of undergraduates from philosophy majors, went to SCAD, and people from design schools, and we just put them in a group and said, okay, you guys are the millennials. So this is 2014. They were in college, so that's a millennial, I guess, right? And we said, tell us what's going to happen. Go in our stores, go in other people's stores, and it was great because they came back and said, we're going to want homes, we're going to want to form families, we're going to be interested in home improvement, and that's actually how it's played out. The generation was delayed with our Great Recession, and everything was sort of pushed back 5, 6, 7 years. But now, homeowners are this close to completely replacing the spend of baby boomers, and their home ownership rates and all new home formation. I mean, the millennial generation is sort of in control now, and they're engaging in home improvement. So we're thrilled, and the pandemic then coming along, they caught up. They probably more than caught up, because now it's like, okay, we formed a home, but it's in a 900 square foot apartment in Manhattan, and so let's go get the dog and go to the suburbs and buy a house. So as we all know, we had this huge housing boom, which we never expected at the start of the pandemic, but it was that millennial catching up in going into largely single family housing. So we couldn't be happier, but we know we have to, the difference. So I said, on one hand, they're not that different, but interrupt me, guys, if I'm not getting this right. If you're like, God, this guy is way off on how we think, or maybe there's more Gen Zs here than millennials. I have a daughter who's a millennial, latest millennial, and one who's earliest Gen Z. But the difference is the expectations of companies, not just that you're going to provide great service and product at value, but you're going to do kind of the right thing, back to do the right thing. And the company's going to have a purpose, and it's going to be more stakeholder than just strictly shareholder focus and returns. What are you doing? What are you doing for the community? What are you doing for the environment? What are you doing for your shareholders? What are you doing for underserved populations? Those are all expected of the brands and the companies of the position of a Home Depot. And we couldn't agree more. And we're actually thrilled, because that demand of a purpose-driven company that's giving back and has other concerns than strictly the bottom line and the shareholder, is I won't repeat all the inverted pyramid and the values wheel that I chatted about earlier, but that is 100% aligned with the Home Depot's values. So we're not having to scramble and go into meeting rooms and hire consultants and say, oh my God, we better get a purpose. We better, what's our value statement? Let's hire a public relations firm to help us come up with a new public image to satisfy the desires of expectations. So we're so fortunate because we just go back to first principles of the inverted pyramid and the values wheel, and we're actually happier that people are actually noticing more now what we've always done. We've never really blown our own horn, but I don't know if you all saw we had a recent television commercial, and we're very careful about this because as soon as you start talking about yourself and trying to present, what you do well, then, where do you cross the line of authenticity? Because you're like, hey, let me tell you how great we are. Then that doesn't come off as genuine, and the heart of our brand is real, genuine, authentic. But we teamed up with Ron Howard's documentary production company, and we did a 18-minute long, just under 18-minute long documentary called Hope Builds. And we ran a 30-second television spot. I don't think anyone saw it because everyone turned off the national championship game. And we chose to run it in the third quarter when everyone would be so excited about the game. But I don't think anyone was watching other than rabid Georgia fans at that point. And but it was a 30-second spot, and what it showed was Home Depot's organic, do the right thing, give back response to natural disasters. And for years, not a corporate initiative, not, hey, we need to get PR points, but for years, the Home Depot has responded to floods and hurricanes and fires and the like, very naturally, very organically at the store level. And this documentary captures how that first started, and it first started in a significant way with Hurricane Andrew in 1992 in South Florida. And it's a wonderful piece to just show that we do these things because it's the right thing to do, and we're trying to take the right steps to, we call it externalize the internal. How do we kind of at least tell our story a little bit without, crossing the line that you're no longer authentic? And I think, Ron Howard's company did a phenomenal job. You can go online and YouTube and look at the full 17-minute piece, but it's really a tearjerker what our people do.
That's great. I was just thinking when he said go online to YouTube, I was thinking I should go on YouTube and look at that. I will. Wanted to shift gears a little bit, and that is, what advice would you give to 22-year-old Ted Becker?
Well, I didn't really mean don't have a plan, but what advice? That's such an appropriate but hard question. My fundamental advice is if you can find something you're passionate about doing, medicine, environment, business, accounting, law, whatever it is, something you're passionate about doing, and do it in an industry you have a passion for. So like, I mentioned Delta, like some people love airlines and travel, and like, I want to work for an airline, or I want to be an engineer, I want to build bridges, I want to work for a construction company. Find a industry that you're passionate about. And then if you can find the right company or institution that you can do your passion in an industry, in a pursuit you're passionate about with a great company, a purpose-driven company, you've hit a home grand slam. And I got lucky beyond lucky. In the not having a plan part is, it can happen in so many ways. Mine was this random phone call. It could have never. The fact that I'm sitting here with you, Dean, I mean, it's beyond random in that regard. But what were the things that were consistent? What, you know, you talk about control what you can control. The thing that I probably controlled, and this might sound boring and old-fashioned, but the only thing I could control during my entire approaching 60 years was how hard I worked. I mean, I can't improve whatever my IQ is. I can't do anything about that. I can't be 6 feet. I can't have a full head of flowing blonde hair, you know, but what I can do is work. And it just, whatever you want to do, be a doctor, build bridges, work at a home improvement store, there is no path that doesn't require a ton of work. And I'm sorry if that's just like, oh God, that's his advice, work hard. You know, but there isn't much, unless you're a genius, unless you're Patrick Mahomes, unless you're what is it, Yo-Yo Ma, the cello. I mean, but you're talking about 0.0001% of people. The rest of us just have to work, unfortunately.
Probably.
Not that they don't work and practice, but I mean, they're off the charts.
Probably Yo-Yo Ma practices a lot and works very hard. And kind of reminds me of the saying, the harder I work, the luckier I get, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a last question, and then we will open it to the audience. Is there any question that I did not ask you and you wish I had?
Oh, man. You know, we touched on it a little bit, and maybe it would just be, and I actually don't wish you asked this question, but a lot of people ask it, you know, with, you know, ESG and environment and social and government and, you know, how companies are responding. And these are truly very, very challenging times, and it's very hard to navigate expectations because, as I said, while most people know what the right thing is, there are some very, you know, broader things that you're kind of equally split on what people think the right thing is. And the expectation of a corporation to solve that or have the right answer for society is really, really hard. But that doesn't mean we're not responsible to helping at least move the discussions forward or solutions forward. And again, Home Depot's been doing that for 43 years. So we're thrilled to be involved. So our principal I don't want to say charity, our principal sort of giving back initiatives is around veterans' causes and homelessness in veterans and housing needs for wounded veterans and particularly catastrophically wounded veterans. And we are, again, this is like as soon as you talk about it, you're touting your horn, but we're approaching $400 million that we've given to veteran causes, and that's at sort of a $50-75 million a year clip. And then we don't just write a check, we get involved. We have an organization called Team Depot, and these are, you know, we put sweat equity in, and we will go out with associates, store associates, distribution center associates, store support center associates, and, you know, we will go and build the house. We will repair the house. We will move dirt and haul mulch, and we do thousands and thousands of projects every year in all 50 states, largely focused around veterans' houses. We just did one, excuse me, this fall, where we found 8 veterans in the same neighborhood in West Atlanta, and we had, I don't know, what do we have, 400 people out that day, and in one day, we imagine what 400 people, imagine the to-do list you could get through 8 houses with 400 people in one day. And that's the kind of stuff we do every day, but it's our responsibility as well.
That's great. Okay, let's now open it to the audience. And again, let me remind you, just raise your hand and we'll bring a mic. There.
Hello. Hi, I'm Imani Herring. Nice to meet you. And as a Pittsburgh native, I
All
just
right.
love to hear that you spent 7 years in the wonderful Steel City. But my question is really about customer loyalty. And I love the idea of the inverted pyramid. It's actually the first time I had heard about that. But, thinking more about your conversation about the, two equal addressable markets here, and really that robust customer loyalty program that you have for the pros, how do you view customer loyalty and attracting and retaining that second half of the addressable market?
The consumer
and
side or the pro
consumers,
side?
the consumer side.
So are you at Tech now?
No, I am not. I'm a prospective
Okay.
MBA student.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
but
a
I work in
Pittsburgh-
tech.
A Pittsburgh native. And I see a William and Mary T-shirt back there. So this is terrific. So it's a really good question. Loyalty programs I think they're tricky. Let's be honest. The company is doing it to collect data, and as things digitize, and you talk about cookies going away and the need to have more first-party data, loyalty programs are a great way to do that. So I give you something, you give me something. What you're giving me is your data. What we may be giving you is points or miles or free hotel stays or product or lunches or whatever the give to get is. On the pro side, let me just say why we decided to do it on the pro side. That's a customer who really has a need to engage with us. That's a customer, they're our most active e-commerce digital engagement is with our pro, because they could just be checking, is there enough product there? I'm going to stop at the store before I go to a job. I need 30 bags of tile set. Does the store have 30 bags? Or do I need to go to a different store? So there, the engagement is so active, and we're really just rewarding them to say thank you. We're giving them a means, an app, a device to get what they need faster, and as a very modest thank you, it's not a point scheme, you're not earning tons of fun stuff, free stuff. You're getting a meaningful, but more of a thank you. On the consumer side, we talk about it, we research it, we debate it every year, and we just haven't pulled the trigger because we haven't come up with something that isn't the typical points, earn this much, get this much, and I don't know. It doesn't seem that interesting. So until we come up with something interesting, and if any of you have any ideas, please let me know, because I haven't figured it out yet. But as much as I love Delta in Marriott, it could be Hilton and United in the sense of it's the exact same. They copy, it's the exact same programs. It's just not differentiated. So until we come up with a differentiated program that we can really give value to the consumer, and one of the problems is frequency. Remember, you need frequency, and the consumer, on average, is 6 odd times a year. That's really not enough frequency. A frequent miler, a road warrior is spending 200 nights a year out in the hotel. You come to Home Depot 6 times a year, how engaged, Starbucks, that makes sense. People go to Starbucks literally every day. So they have an app, and they have a loyalty program, and rewards, and it's gamified. I haven't figured it out yet. We haven't figured it out yet.
Hey, I'm Nelvin. I'm a first year here at Tech. I want to thank you for just taking the time to talk to us. My question has to do with your leadership, and how is it like developed over your career? And do you feel like you have a specific leadership style, or does it change per situation?
Well, you could probably ask our Home Depot team. You know, I don't. I think the reason I'm at Home Depot for 23 years and I've had the career I've had at Home Depot is because I completely aligned with the servant leadership principles and in the values. And you know, it's truly no I in team, and we're a very collegial, you know, team-oriented company. And so to be like the leader, you know, the kind of, and they're unbelievably successful, you know, I'm the leader and give me the mic, and some companies need that, some situations need that. I'm not that person. I'm not gonna, right? I mean, they need someone else. So, but if you want to be a servant leader, if you never want to ask someone else to do something you won't do yourself, if you're not out there on the build, you know, working alongside people in the Habitat House, if you're not the last to leave the office, you can't, you know, I mean, you're just every day demonstrating that you're doing what the team's doing and that you care as much as anyone else. And you just, and it isn't me building that. This is 43 years of Home Depot. I'm just the current guy in the chair. And so I don't know if that was an answer, but there's lots of ways to do it. There are lots of ways to do it. And I think, again, I don't read a lot of business books. I read editorials and little pieces. The whole leadership thing is pretty interesting. You know, with this, you know, what in more horizontal, increasingly virtual workplaces, you know, what is the leader? What's the role? How do you motivate? How do you align? It's actually becoming more complicated, I think. Dean, what do you, I mean?
Yeah, I think the whole concept of leadership is shifting because of the environment and situations where you have the leadership has to emerge is changing so much. You know, if you think about it, as we become more virtual, how do leaders emerge in virtual environments? In in-person environments, typically people who are usually, they talk frequently, they are articulate, they are extroverted, they are outgoing. Typically, they emerge as leaders, okay? But in a virtual environment, when you can't see people, how do leaders emerge? So these are really interesting questions. And several years ago, I did a study on emergence of leadership in virtual environments using teams of executives who were taking courses at a different university. And really, emergence of leadership in that environment was mostly based on ability to solve problems, being helpful, to being able to answer questions that other team members would, you know, pose in that virtual environment. So being more of a problem solver and providing more support rather than you're taller, you have a better voice, you're more articulate kind of a thing. So, yeah.
Hi, Ted. I'm Jill. I
Hi.
went to Tech and graduated with this guy back in 2011. And so my question for you is, given the kind of pressure cooker that the pandemic was able to impose on everyone, what are the like one or two qualities that you think that like made a diamond out of from you as a leader that maybe wouldn't have come about if the world had continued on without a global shutdown and supply chain issues and all of that?
We grew 43% in 3 years, which is going to be $47 billion. I mean, so just crazy growth. So things were hard, and supply chains, as you said, among other things, were super challenging. But we did well, and the team did well. And the stock price did well. I actually give a lot of credit, to Craig Manier, who was our prior CEO. We had to make a lot of decisions, particularly in the early days of the pandemic. And Craig's an amazing servant leader, and totally aligned with the values wheel and this notion of doing the right thing and giving back. And we did things like, it was so rewarding to see that we made calls that were so aligned with our values as opposed to profit. And Craig said early on, this is about doing the right thing. This is not about sales. And he got us all aligned that we were going to do the right thing. So we did things, obviously we didn't raise prices. Other than cost input in, because as we all know, inflation took off, but it wasn't like we have more demand, we're going to raise prices. We limited customer count in the store. No one told us we had to do that. In fact, there were regulations of people per square foot, and I think with our square footage, we could have, within any jurisdiction, even places like San Francisco, we could have had 500 people at any one time in the store. We said 100 people. That's it. We're gonna, have 6 feet apart lines outside the store. The IT team came up with a quick app on a device because we have multiple. Makes it a little harder for us because we have like 5 entry spots in the store, so you need to be coordinated where people are coming in and leaving to keep it at 100. So we just did things like that that did the right thing as opposed to let's max profit. So I don't know how it reflected on me. I just my alignment maybe with that. At the time I was the head merchant, and the head merchant drives sales. That's your job, drive sales. And to totally be aligned with Craig in the call, and the team was totally aligned. So if I had had another approach, I wouldn't be sitting here today. If I had been a rabble rouser and we got to drive sales, what do you mean 100 people? Let's delete. We can do 200. We're still on less than 50% of regulation, but none of us did that. We just said, no, what's the right thing?
One last very quick question.
I've got a mic, unless somebody.
Oh, okay, all right.
So Doug Alving, my dad taught here for 30 years. Got an MBA with my colleague here, but I also have an industrial engineering degree. You talked about the growth grows more, better, faster, and she kind of tweaked on a little bit the big elephant that we haven't talked about yet. You guys have to have some type of really amazing supply chain strategy. Anything you can kind of provide some very quick, short insights on?
Yeah, so supply chain, honestly, the most dynamic supply chain right now, what we're building is at the Home Depot. It is an unbelievable supply chain team. Again, tons of Georgia Tech folks on the team. We are building out a network for anything we sell, which in big and bulky, concrete, lumber, et cetera, to deliver same next day to 90% of the US population. We will build 150 new facilities. It's something like 40 million square feet of warehouse space. It's unbelievable technology, ship from best location, optimize, it's a massive Georgia Tech operations research optimization function. It's so cool. There's not a more fun place to work in supply chain at Home Depot because they're creating that magic that we need to deliver.
Well, great. Thank you, Ted,
Thank you.
for spending part of your evening with us.
Thank you.
Your leadership is truly inspiring, and we learned so much from you. And of course, thank you to the audience for being here, for being engaged. My hope is that after this conversation, you all can go away with some insights and some ideas so that you can lead in your own specific spheres of influence. So thank you for your time, for being here. And I also want to thank Scheller College team for doing an amazing job of getting this organized. Just very quickly, we have classes here, like until like the nth minute before this event, and they get here and they get everything organized. So thank you. Please join us for a reception in the atrium. Thanks again.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you so much. It
Thank
was
you.
terrific.
Thank
It
you.
was so
Thank
much
you.
fun. Thank you.